My name is Stacy and I am an alcoholic. By the grace of God, the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12 steps and the 12 traditions working in my life one day at a time, and some really mean sponsorship, I haven't had a drink or anything that's affected me from the neck up since April the 25th of 2003. That's 23 years last Saturday. And I'm very, very pleased with your work, Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm a proud, satisfied customer. And I want to thank you all for the honor and privilege of being here. Thank you to anybody who had an invitation and me coming here. Thank you to Kent and to Debbie for opening your beautiful home to me. It's absolutely lovely. And my friend Alice for coming and visiting and spending some time with me today. Prior to coming here, Kent drove me here in his self-driving Tesla. That guy really turns his will and his life over, let me tell you. I couldn't do it. I just can't trust those things. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm focused. I feel like I need to start with this story. I told it last night at another group that I was talking in, but it's just on my heart. It's been a little while and I haven't told this story until it's been a while since I told it since last night. But anyway, I was asked to speak several years ago. I think it was about maybe 13 years ago. I got asked to speak in Lufkin, Texas. Now, you don't know where that is. And I don't know where that is. And I'm from Texas. And people from Lufkin don't know where it is. It's just desolate. It's out in the middle of nowhere. It's exactly what you would imagine with desolate, out in the middle of nowhere, Texas. And I was traveling with a couple of other speakers for that weekend. And I'm from the big city. And my friends, all my speaker friends, they're all from the rural communities. And so they're used to wild animals. And I am not. The wild animals in my city are like pimps and prostitutes and the people that I like to associate myself with. And so I'm not accustomed to that kind of stuff. And so we were driving and they like to lie to me and they tell me stuff that's not true just because I'm gullible. And we were passing a pasture of cows. And they said to me, pay attention to the way that the cows are positioned. Because if they're hunkered down, that's a Texas phrase. If they are hunkered down, I mean, they're sitting, then it means it's going to rain. And so I'm getting into this, right? And I'm looking at the cows and only half of them were hunkered down. So I said, well, what does that mean? They said, that's a 50% chance of rain. And so we get to Lufkin and I'm the Saturday night speaker, main event, right? And I'm outside and I'm getting prayed up for the whole deal. And this guy comes out and he's like, I wonder if it's going to rain. And I said, actually, it's a 50% chance of rain. And he said, how do you know that? I said, because half the cows were hunkered down this morning. And he looked at me insanely and he said, they're not hunkered down because it's going to rain. They're hunkered down because they're tired. He said, what is wrong with you? And I said, I don't know. I'm just here to give a talk. So, if you think you've got some expert up here on Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm here to tell you I'm an expert on nothing. Okay. The reason I'm up here is because I successfully burned my life to the ground. And I've also learned that I don't need alcohol to burn my life to the ground either. I can do it sober. And I'm convinced that the day comes where I stop saying yes to commitments like this. I believe I'm on my way out. And I don't ever want to go back to the way I was living ever again. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and I was 25 years old. It was time. When I got to AA, the professionals were telling me, where's that water? Oh, we're all going to wait while I look for it. I think it's gone. Oh, well, I'll survive. Anyway, when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, the professionals were telling me that I would be dead within a year, and I believed them. How did you do that? That's magical. First the Tesla, now this. I feel like y'all are just amazing. Y'all are so magical in advance for me. Anyway, so the professionals told me I'd be dead within a year, and I believed that. When I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had guilt and shame. I could not look you in the face, especially the women. I just couldn't look at you. And when I came to AA, I had been arrested several times. Now, thank God I learned in the rooms of AA, if you've been arrested more than 3 times, all you have to say is several. I've been arrested several times. I've also been institutionalized several times, okay? And for anybody in here that's wondering, yes, you can do it with marriages too. Just say several. That's all we need to know. We already know. And so, That's just the way I live. I'm a low bottom drunk. I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous because I sung too loud in the choir. I didn't come here because I wrecked my parents' Corvette. No, I came here on a losing streak that lasted a number of years. And so, I took my first drink when I was 12 years old, and I feel like it was time. I had been restless and irritable and discontent for quite a while. I've always been really inappropriate. I don't know if there's any other inappropriate people in here. I've done everything wrong I just always overshoot the mark. I never quite get it the way it needs to go. And that's just awkward and weird. And I've been like that since I was a kid. My nickname was Stacy all throughout elementary. And I was really intelligent. I don't know if I still am, but I was back then. And I had a photographic memory. And all that means is I can memorize things very easily. Did it with the big book too when I got here. So I never had to study for anything. And I've always accelerated at the extraordinary, but I've had a lot of trouble with the ordinary. Never had to study, never had to prepare for any tests, but I could not figure out my locker combination. And so I used to just carry all 7 books to class. I just kind of ignored that I had a locker. So I just hugged the books, and people would stick their leg out and they'd trip me and I'd go flying and the books would go flying. They would laugh about it. If you ever see a kid like that in school, I think you should give them a drink. It's just not fair. I suffered so long, and silence too. And I set up this relationship with alcohol at 12 because I just needed to take a drink. And I would love to tell you that I drank at a party and I was trying to impress the cool people. No, I drank alone in my first drink. Okay. And my last drink was alone too. In the middle of Fiesta in San Antonio, which is a 2-week party. I didn't even know there was a party outside. Anyway, and so I take this drink, and I got into my parents' liquor cabinet and I got a bunch of booze and I started drinking and I experienced that effect produced by alcohol that we talk about all the time in these rooms. It's like the tingling on the top of my head all the way to the tip of my toes. It was just magical. And I love to be drunk. And when I say drunk, I always feel like I need to give a concrete definition of what that means. If I am standing up, I'm not drunk. You know what I mean? Like, I like a really wild, messy, nasty, inappropriate drunk. You know what I'm saying? The kind of drinking I like to do, I like to be holding onto the grass to keep from falling off the earth. That's the kind of drinking I like to do. You know what I mean? Because I found the magic of alcohol, because what alcohol can do for me is it'll flip a switch in my head that says, I don't care what you think about me. I don't care what's happening around me. When I drink alcohol, I find that spiritual principle of whatever. You know what I mean? That spiritual mountaintop of the great oh well. And that's exactly where I want to live. And I love that place because that's not the way I feel when I'm not drinking. When I'm not drinking, I am completely and grossly attached to what you think about me. And I really, really want you to like me. Now, I don't like you at all, but I do want you to like me. I think that's important. That's all I care about. I just need an audience. My sponsor says it best. My first drug of choice was attention, and still probably is there. Anyway, it's a work in progress. And so, I set up this relationship with alcohol at 12 years old because when I discovered what it does, I made a very conscious decision early on that I was going to do that as often as I could and as hard as I could. And that's precisely what I did. I pursued alcohol into the gates of insanity and almost death. Now, another interesting thing happened to me at 12 years old, very pivotal moment in my life, is that they committed me to my first mental institution. And they said that my nerves broke down. And I don't know about you, but my nerves broke down quite a bit, And so they stuck me in this mental institution at age 12. And back then they could keep you for a while, right? So I got in when I was 12, and I got out a month before I turned 14. And so I got out of the mental institution in June. I turned 14 in July, and in August, I started high school. And they got my transcripts from the mental institution, and they didn't know what to do with a budding alcoholic of my type. But it was an interesting time in history. They had this federal policy back then. It was called No Child Left Behind. And what that means is they're going to graduate you. They just have to creatively figure out how they're going to do it. And so they stuck me in this program. It was called the Challenger Program. And it was for gang members and pregnant teenagers. And I was neither one, but they just kind of threw me in there to just figure it out. And I didn't know what that program was at the time. They never made us listen to a lecture. I never had to read a book. I never had to complete an assignment. All I had to do was show up at 8 o'clock in the morning to Robert E. Lee High School in San Antonio, Texas, and they would schlep us across to the auditorium. And there was some guy on a stage like this who had tattoos all over himself. He had a glass eye, and he had just gotten out of the Dominguez State Penitentiary. And he was telling us not to join the Crips. And I thought, well, this is dumb. I don't want anything to do with this. I was just bored. I know now it was an at-risk youth program. They were trying to stop us from burning our lives to the ground. But I took no interest in such a lecture. And so I spent my high school years behind the dumpster at Robert E. Lee High School, drinking Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill, Thunderbird with grape Kool-Aid, some Night Train. I like that stuff that gives you a 2-day hangover. You know what I mean? Yes. All that classy stuff. And, we weren't talking about joining the Peace Corps, joining the military, serving the country. Oh, no. We were talking about going to North Star Mall and shoplifting. That was my plans for the afternoon. That's the best laid plans that I could come up with. And back then I had a really bad habit of stealing car emblems. So if you drove a Mercedes-Benz in the early 90s in San Antonio, Texas, and you're missing your emblem, I'm willing to make that right after the meeting. Okay. I was probably wearing it back then. Anyway, so, the administration of the high school got really sick of my antics. And how I know that is they approached me and they said, we're really sick of your antics. See, back then I wore combat boots. I dressed in all black. I had a mohawk. I wasn't a vision for you. You know what I mean? And Alice was so gracious to me this afternoon. She took me to brunch and she fed me. And the thing that you have to know, California AA, is if you feed this old Southern girl, we are now family, okay? And so I'm going to tell you something that I used to do that was really inappropriate because we're family. I feel like I need to overshare. I used to wear a shirt to high school that would get me kicked out, guaranteed, right? Instantly kicked out of school. And it said, excuse me, you're standing on my penis. And they don't care for that kind of stuff. They don't think that that's the kind of scholarly student that they want at Robert E. Lee High School. And so, needless to say, they were sick of me. And they said, we have this new program and we're going to enroll you in it. It's called the Full Day Cooperative Education Program. All you have to do is get a job. That's it. You don't even have to come to school. In fact, we're going to nicely ask you, please stop coming to campus. They said, just go get you a job and show us your paycheck stubs and we're going to graduate you from high school. So I got me a little job. I showed them my paycheck stubs and they graduated me from high school at 17 years old with what I now know is the equivalence of a 6th grade education, because that is the last time I learned anything in a classroom. I graduated from high school. I walked the stage. Everybody was shocked. I was shocked. My parents were shocked. They gave me the little diploma. They shook my hand and my parents looked at me and they said, oh, I guess you graduated. And so a tradition in my home is that my parents like to give me a box. They kept a box for every kid in the house. And they had this box of stuff, the things that you collect over the years, little pictures I had made, trophies, whatever. And they gave it to me. And in that box was my birth certificate. And I took my birth certificate and I altered it to show that I was older. And I actually went to the DMV and I got a driver's license with an older birth date on it. And at 17 years old, I started working in the topless bar industry. I got into that industry when I was 17. I got out when I was 25. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous at 25. So, I'm so grateful for the third tradition in Alcoholics Anonymous that you all don't have any requirements but a desire to stop drinking. Because it's safe to say when I came to you, I was feral. I was just a crazy, crazy person, a product of jails, a product of institutions, had never worked an honest day's work in my life and was extremely inappropriate in your rooms. So I don't know about anybody else in here, but I'm a firm believer that hostage taking is an important life skill. Because that's how I do romantic relationships. If it wasn't for hostage taking, I would have been chronically single. And I wasn't. I was a little bit of a hoe, actually. And so if you're in here and you are wondering, gosh, how do I hostage take? I'm here to give you some tips, okay? So you have to find people that have something in common with you. You know what I mean? I like chocolate ice cream. They like chocolate ice cream. And as far as I'm concerned, we go together. You know what I mean? And if you start dating me, you do not break up with me. Oh, no, you don't. No, because I will scale your gated community wall and I'm coming to your job. Because I need you to know that I love you. You know what I mean? And so I met this old boy when I was working in the club. He was a DJ at the club, as a matter of fact. And we started talking and things went well for about 30 minutes. And that was good enough for me. And as I got to know this old boy, what I found out about him is that he drank like I did. And he drank like I did. He lied like I did. Oh, he was just, what do you do with a diamond like that, ladies? I mean, you get your hands on him because you don't want any of your girlfriends to get him, right? And so, I got my claws in that old boy and I moved in right away. We set up housekeeping, right? And so you can let your imagination go as far as what you want to about what two actively drinking alcoholics living together looks like. A friend of mine back in the day used to describe us the best. Our love was so big, we had to take it outside. You know what I mean? When you have that big love, you can't just have that hidden in the house. No, we are pillars of the community. We are mentors. You know what I mean? We've got to put our love on display so others can follow our example, right? And so, we lived on a cul-de-sac and we just fought in the middle of the street all the time. I remember one time he opened up the door on Christmas and he threw the Christmas tree out on the lawn. I went out there, I screamed at him. I think I was in my underwear. We called each other every name in the book. It was a match made in heaven. And, so here's the thing. We were horrible to each other. And I get that. I know looking back in retrospect, that was a horrible relationship and probably mortifying for the neighbors. I think we brought the property value down. But, the reason we stayed together as long as we did is both of us said that we were going to leave the other one once we sobered up. And neither of us could get that together. So we stayed together for a very long time. And it's always important that I talk about why that relationship ended, and this is a good time for me to say this. If you're in here and you're new and we're laughing and you don't understand why we're laughing because maybe it's recently happening to you and you don't find it funny, what I want you to know is we get that. Because it's not funny when it's happening to you. But the reason why we laugh about these things is what we want you to understand is that you cannot laugh about something that hasn't healed. And if it can heal for one of us, it can heal for all of us. There is not a single story that I can't tell behind this podium because it doesn't own me anymore. You must keep coming back until it's funny. All I did was cry when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And the next part of this story that I'm going to tell you is not one that I'm very proud of. The book says we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. But there are stories that I do not like. But the fact of the matter is it's the only story I have. It was 1999 and the Spurs were winning their championship, the first championship we ever had, and that was against the New York Knicks. And I was celebrating. Of course I was celebrating. I was always drunk. And I took a drink and I got sick. And I took another drink and I got sick and I just could not keep my alcohol down. And I was like, don't worry about it. I'll get better. And I could not get better. I just kept feeling sick. And like a good drunk, I will wait until the last minute to go to the doctor. And I went to the doctor finally after weeks of being ill. And what I found out is I was towards the end of my first trimester. And I know that most women, when they find out that they're pregnant, they are happy about that. They feel the movement of the baby in their stomach and they're so excited. What I'm going to tell you is that was not the case for me. And I will tell you that I have held the hands of women who prayed for children who had infertility issues. I have held the hands of women I sponsor who have had miscarriages. And this is the only story I have. And I have to tell it exactly the way it was back then, because me without you is not a pleasant picture. I had several things going on at that time. Number one, I knew that I could not stay sober for 9 months. I knew the repercussions of what was going to happen to my child. And number two, I did not want any child to have a mother like me. I was bulimic. I was cutting myself in places people couldn't see. I absolutely hated myself. I was convinced that I was a horrible, wretched, evil human being. And I saw this child as a trap. This child would trap me with this man that I hated. I just hated him. I knew he was the problem. He did cocaine, So as far as I'm concerned, he was evil. And never mind, I did outside issues too, but not those kinds. So he's evil. And, so I made this decision that I was not going to have that child. And I did not have that child. And it got to a point where he just could not live with my decision any longer. And he asked me to leave. And I remember moving my stuff out of our sumptuous apartment. We had an apartment on the 18th floor. It was a beautiful apartment. And I'm moving my stuff out. I'm just moving it out one at a time. And he's standing at the door because he doesn't trust me. right? He knows that I'm going to probably burn the apartment down or I'm going to steal something, which is true. Back then I would have done either one if he hadn't have watched me. And he's just watching me and he won't even look at me. And I'm getting my stuff out and I got all of my stuff into my vehicle. And it doesn't take long for the ego to rebuild itself. And I look at myself in the mirror and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to get my life together. And the next time he sees me, he's going to regret that he left all this. You know what I mean? And I don't know how you get your life together, but I buy an outfit. You know what I'm saying? Because you got to get it looking good for the next one. That's all I care about. Just get it looking good and snatch the next one. And so I went out and I bought this really cute outfit, you guys, really cute. And my life went to hell. So I started going in and out of jails and in and out of mental institutions. Gradually, things get worse. It's getting to a point where I'm starting to check myself into these mental institutions. I'm giving them my weapon. I'm giving them my belt and I'm telling them I'm not safe and neither is anyone else in my home. They're diagnosing me with everything under the sun. If it's in the DSM-5, I've had it 3 or 4 times. It's kind of like COVID, you know, I'm just catching these illnesses and I'm taking these pills. I'm taking pills 4, 5, 6, 7 times a day. I had a pill box the size of my home group's chip box. And we have a lot of old timers, you know, and nothing's getting better in my life. And so I'm starting to drink and I'm taking these pills and I'm gaining all this weight. I gained like 60 pounds and I wasn't showering and I wasn't changing my clothes. I wore the same pink jumpsuit for like a month and I thought I looked like J-Lo. I didn't. And, you know, I became unemployable for the kind of work I did, you know, and it gets crazy. It gets worse. I'm going to speed it up by saying that I ended up in university hospital dead on arrival. I'd taken a bunch of pills and I drank a bunch of alcohol. I was not trying to commit suicide. I was just trying to get some relief. The book talks about that sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks. I wasn't getting that relief anymore. I was restless. I was irritable. I was discontent and I was drunk. That's a horrible place to be. It's painful when your only solution stops working. And I remember waking up in that hospital and my family was standing there and I had completely humiliated them with my actions and my behavior. And I won't go into the particulars and the details about the story, but I will tell you that my own father was there completely ashamed of me. Couldn't even look at me. And he said to me, Stacy, I'm so sorry because I can't help you. And he walked out of the room and I was completely demoralized and humiliated. I would love to tell you that that was my last drink, but I drank up until the point where they took me to treatment. On April 25th of 2003, they drove me to a treatment center in the Hill Country. That is my sobriety date. The treatment center did their job. They separated me from alcohol for what I hope to be the last time. And if you're anything like me, life doesn't get better when you stop drinking. You know, things just continue to get worse. And I had these horrible memories, things that I had done and things that had been done to me. And I would tell the counselors, there's no way that I can stay sober. I really thought in Alcoholics Anonymous that that's the way you lived. I thought that you were completely miserable and you were just not drinking. I thought that the way I felt on my first day of sobriety would be the way I would feel for the rest of my life. And I could not picture life without alcohol. Not like that, not in those conditions. I didn't understand that my alcoholism didn't start when I took my first drink and it didn't stop when I put it down, you know, and yet the treatment center did their job. They started talking to me about alcoholism, you know, not the way you talk to me, but they opened a door for me. And the door that they opened was a door in my mind that for an alcoholic of my type, the only solution would be Alcoholics Anonymous. And they told me when you get out of treatment, don't unpack, don't go on vacation, don't get another boyfriend. That's okay. I had 4 of them. The treatment center was full of them and I needed commissary. And so I had lots of boyfriends in the treatment center. Anyway, so they said, go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and get you a sponsor and start working the steps because clearly your life depends on it. Now, I sobered up in Texas AA and I know California. I know y'all watch the news. And you're probably wondering, is Texas really that crazy? Yes, it is. We know we're crazy. We just can't do anything about it. You know what I mean? We're insane. And Texas AA is the same way. You know, we're a little throwed off, like we like to say. There was this old boy in my home group. His name was Frank F. He was a little famous out in the Houston area. He and another member of AA got into a fist fight in the parking lot of an AA meeting over who had the most serenity, right? See, and that's the breed that I come from. And I'm so proud to be a member of Texas AA. Let me tell you, you know, they were just nuts. But here's the thing that they did for me while they were crazy, because they really get drunk in Texas. We're thoroughbred, man. We really get drunk, but we also really get sober too. Those guys, any problem that I came to the meeting with, they would say to me, open the book and find your problem in there. They kept leading me back to the solution. They kept leading me back to where I would find the solution to every problem. And they would tell me, they said, nothing kills an alcoholic faster than terminal uniqueness. You need to be one of us. You need to identify with us, because if you become unique, you won't belong here and there's nothing we can do to help you. And so they were really good at looking out for me, and they were always talking through the book. I'm a 3 legacy gal. I believe in unity, service, and recovery. I was taught that this is a 3-part disease and it has a 3-fold solution. I was taught that I have to be on all 3 sides of the triangle in order to continue to maintain my sobriety. That's the kind of people I came from. Now, I was to meet my sponsor. My first sponsor was Annie M. from Kerrville, Texas, who sobered up in the suburban group of Austin, Texas. As I've told you, I am a product of some really mean sponsorship. I don't want you to get the wrong idea. Nancy B. from Denton, Texas gave me the best definition of a mean sponsor. She said, it's someone who cares more about what you're doing than how you're feeling. That's the kind of sponsorship I come from. You know, my sponsor would say things like, it's not that I don't care how you feel, but do you not want to feel that way anymore? For that, we have a solution. Now, she was also really mean and cruel, because when I was new, I came in and I was still not showering and I wasn't changing my clothes the way I was supposed to, you know what I mean? And I was still carrying a lot of weight from my drinking days, but this is a disease of perception and I'll see it however I want to see it. So I just knew I had it going on, right? And I knew that everybody felt so bad that they had gotten married before I walked in. And so, you know, Annie would like hurt my feelings all the time. She just kind of dropped these one-liners and just puncture my ego. One time we were in Walmart, you know, the aisle with the candles with the saints on them. I mean, you know how beautiful they are. They got the light around them and they're holding the heart of Jesus. Well, I was looking at them one day and I was like, I would look really good on one of those saint candles. I kind of do look like the Virgen de Guadalupe a little bit. Y'all know it. And my sponsor didn't miss a beat. She said, yeah, you can be the saints of mental patients and fallen women. And I said, well, see, now that's just rude. I didn't say it. I thought it. I was like, that's just rude. I'm never going to talk to her again. You know what I mean? And see, when I got sober, I didn't know you could fire your sponsor. I'm impressed that people come into AA now and they know the rules. I didn't know the rules. I didn't know I could get rid of her. So I just kind of hung around with her anyway, even though I was mad at her, you know. And Annie taught me how to live in Alcoholics Anonymous. Very vital part of sponsorship, I believe, you know, because every good idea I've learned, I learned it in here. You all are the only training ground I've ever had. I've never really had outside help. I'll be honest with you. I'm not saying I don't need it. I'm just saying I never had it. You know what I mean? I just kind of come here and act the fool. I show up to group conscience in my pajamas. That's my therapy. Anyway, so, you know, I learned all the good things in here. I learned where I come from. I was taught to be on time. That's 15 minutes early. And I was taught to stay late. I was taught to work the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and not the room. I think that's important. You know, I was also taught to dress appropriately and watch my language. Now I have a myriad of curse words in my vocabulary, but you're not going to hear any of them tonight because I believe that the outward appearance must match the inward reality. If I profess to love a program called Alcoholics Anonymous, my actions and my words and my outfit should show it. And it turns out, if you go to work on time and you dress appropriately and you talk appropriately, you get to keep your job. That might not be news to y'all, but that was really shocking to me. Keep in mind, I never had an honest day's work before I got here. You know, and my sponsor also told me to take a lot of service commitments. I was very active in service very early. I had a group that said, Stacy, we need you. You know, they kept me active in service right away. I was the treasurer for my home group before I had a year of sobriety and have held just about every position in the area and in the district with the exception of the delegate. I've gotten to do a lot of things. And I don't want to miss the most important part. Annie opened the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and she started taking me through that 12-step process. And as that 12-step process started taking place in my life, what happened to me is what it describes in the back of the book, Appendix 2, Spiritual Experience, where it says the personality change sufficient to overcome alcoholism occurred. I believe that the woman who walked in here on April 25th of 2003 will always drink again. I can't be her. I'm a firm believer that this program is about an inward transformation, and the byproduct is that we don't drink. It's not that I'm not drinking and I change. It's that I change and I don't drink. And yes, I had a problem with the God thing. If you're in here and you're new, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. That's precisely why we titled that chapter, We Agnostics. They knew that a girl like me would come in here and did not believe in anything spiritual. I wasn't doing any yoga. I wasn't doing no praying and meditating. I was out there hustling. That's what I was doing in my drinking. And so I come in here to Alcoholics Anonymous and you guys talk about a God of your understanding. And that is no concept that I have any familiarity with. But you all told me that that was okay, because the purpose of the steps is to shrink my ego down small enough to experience the spirit, or have a spiritual experience, however you want to say it. And what I was taught when I came here is if I took the 12 steps, that the process would yield the results. And as a result of working all 12 steps, what happened to me is I had a spiritual awakening. My favorite line in the We Agnostics chapter is, the consciousness of your own belief is sure to come to you. What that tells me is that the awareness of what I believe will find me if I just work the steps. It's that simple. It doesn't have to be anything bigger than that. I thought you had to have all these big vocabulary, know all these fancy spiritual and religious words. No, that's not true, because you can have a big God and pray very little. Faith without works is dead. If I'm not taking the action, I'm never going to get the results. And so I had this spiritual awakening and it completely transformed me. It did not relieve me of selfishness and the burden of self. What it did is it gave me a lot of clarity about where I need to be on a Saturday night and on a Sunday night. I've never left you. That's the spiritual awakening, is that I've been a member of Alcoholics Anonymous in good standing for 23 years. There is no other place that I'd want to be. And I'm the best version of myself when I'm with you. It is not a mystery that the more I'm with you, the better my life gets. I understand that. And I have a very big life today, which means I need to do more in Alcoholics Anonymous. The more I have out there, the more I owe in here. It's that simple. And I sponsor a lot of people today. I sponsor as many people as I have voices in my head. That's how I choose to balance that out. And I have a lot of voices in my head. And so I got to work with a lot of crazy people. And it really works out for me. Now, my sponsor did tell me that if I was willing to say yes to service commitments in Alcoholics Anonymous, she told me many amazing things would happen to me in between commitments. Well, when I got into sobriety, I had moved into a sober house. That's not a part of AA, but that's where you go when you have nowhere to live. When I was a year sober, I got to run that sober house. I got to teach women how to mop and stuff like that. It was very cool. And when I was 3 years sober, I went and worked in the Kerrville State Hospital. When I was 4 years sober, I worked in a treatment center. I used to say all I had to do is work in Bexar County Jail and I'll have worked everywhere I've lived. And God of my understanding doesn't throw anything away. So I had this old idea. And the old idea that I had was that I was not college material. I had evidence. I have the equivalence of a 6th grade education. There's a lot of stuff I don't know. And I don't know what I don't know until I just sort of crash into it. It's kind of weird. Well, as a result of the 9th step, my stepfather, who had only known me and my disease, allowed me to come home, and my parents trusted me in the house. And he sat me down. He had just retired from the FBI. And he said to me, I've got a pension and I've been thinking about how I want to invest my money and I'd like to invest it in you. He said, you're really, really smart. I think you should try to go to college. Now, what I didn't tell you is in my disease, I did try to go to college. And long story short, I've been kicked out of several universities, okay, and one community college. But he told me, he said, I want you to apply for a college and get as many scholarships as you can, and I'll help you pay for the rest. And I said, sure, because I knew there was no way I was getting into college, but I'm a woman of my word. So I showed up to Shriner University in Kerrville, Texas, in some torn jeans and a t-shirt. And I was like, I'd like to apply for your college. And they gave me an application. They said, take this home, type it up, have someone edit it, make it look neat, bring it back. I said, that will not be necessary. Do you have a pen? So I filled out my college application in pen. I said, do you need anything else? They said, we need transcripts from any of the colleges that you've been to. And I said, all of them? They said, yes, all of them. I said, what if hypothetically I went to these colleges and I didn't get any credit? And they said, yes, we need those too. And I was like, great. So I get all my transcripts sent to the college and I'm working at the state hospital. I get a call from the admissions office. They need me to come down and sign some paperwork. And I said, for what? Because I'll be honest, I honestly thought they wanted me to sign some affirmative action stuff that I wasn't going to sue them because I'm brown. But that's what I thought, whatever. Because I'm like, I get it. I understand why you don't want me to go to your college. You saw my transcripts. I got you. But the lady said to me, she goes, well, here's the thing. We got your transcripts. Yes, all of them. She said, we've never seen anything like this before. She said, you have 10 A's, 2 B's, 9 D's, 10 F's, and 11 W's. She said, your D's and your F's and your W's don't transfer. You have a 3.83 GPA. And you are eligible for the presidential scholarship. And I said, so is what I hear you saying, you're thinking about accepting me to your school? And she goes, yes, we don't give people the presidential scholarship that are not coming in the fall. Welcome to Shriner University. And I got so excited, I drove down to the admissions office and I could not get out of the car. See, I don't know how to let life be good. I don't know how to accept the abundance that God has for me. And I'll be honest with you, I'm that girl. If I'm not going to win, I don't want to play. It's easier to say I never went. It's harder to say I failed. And I'm talking to God in the car and I said, look, I know I'm not supposed to tell you you're wrong, but you are wrong. There are some wrongs I can never fully right. This is a wonderful gift, but I can't accept it. And I heard a voice in my head, but it wasn't between my ears. And it said, I'm not doing this for you. And I don't know how God talks to you, but it can't be about me. You know, if it's about you, Alcoholics Anonymous, I'll do whatever I need to. And so I walked into that admissions office and I signed the paperwork because I thought one day I might be in front of a group of people and I might be able to say to you, if you have an old idea, you might be wrong. It turns out that as a result of enrolling in that school, God showed me gifts I didn't know I had. In 2007, I walked the stage with my bachelor's degree. And in 2010, I walked the stage again with my master's. On April the 27th, 2015, 2 days after I turned 12 years sober, I successfully defended my dissertation and I became Dr. Gonzalez. Yeah, I'm a PhD. There are many amazing miracles in Alcoholics Anonymous. This one is mine. I went from the pole to the PhD. My grand sponsor used to say, you don't get to where I am from where I'm from on human power. I understand that now more than ever. And I graduated from that college and I got a call from the department chair and she said, would you be willing to teach a class? And I said, well, what class is it? She said, crisis. I said, well, yes, I do have experience with that. So I taught the crisis class at UTSA. They kept promoting me and they kept promoting me and they kept promoting me. My last position was I was an assistant professor in practice at the University of Texas at San Antonio. And I had an office on the 3rd floor. And outside my window of the college campus, across the Commerce Street Bridge, is the Bexar County Jail where I used to be an inmate, from bridge to shore. I think about how many years it took for me to cross that street. And I would look at that and I would just get overwhelmed and I would start crying. And my students would say, Dr. Gonzalez, you're really weird. And they never knew. I left that position in 2022 and I opened a practice. I don't have time to get into the particulars about that. But I will tell you what I do now is I own a clinical practice in San Antonio. I have 11 providers now. 4 years later, I went from 2 to 11. We deal in mental health. I work with a lot of first responders. I work with people in the court system. I work with people with licensure issues, mostly medical professionals. And I help them keep their license when they have substance abuse or mental health issues. They're working with my first responders, man. Uvalde was hard. It was a really hard time after that shooting. And it's an honor and privilege to serve my community that I took so much from. It's an honor to give back. And I feel like I believe that the reason why I do what I do for a living is because God is letting me right those wrongs that I can never fully right. What I never told you is when I was driving drunk, I got arrested on a DWI because I plowed into an on-duty ambulance. And I think because I was so mouthy that day to the first responders that showed up, I think I owe them. So that's why I do what I do. One last story. It'll take me 4 minutes. I'm aware of the time because I'm a college professor. I know. So I get asked to do this every now and then. This is my favorite story, by the way. I'm so excited y'all get to hear it. I get asked to speak every now and then. I don't speak as much as a lot of people do. I don't do this as often as some people. Some people are gone every weekend. That's not me. I'm not doing that often. I've been speaking since I was 4 years sober. I have no idea why, but my sponsor says just to say yes, that why I'm here is none of my business. The why doesn't matter. And so a couple of years ago in 2012, I got asked to speak in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin in the middle of November. Right, that's just awful. It's cold and it's snowy. And Texas, you know what happened to us with the snow. We're still traumatized. Anyway, so I've been taught to say yes, no matter what. If I'm ever available that weekend, I will be there. And so I said, yes, I'd be honored to do so. And so they fly you into a hotel. They fly you into a airport, actually, not a hotel. They fly you into an airport and your host picks you up and they take you to the hotel and they're around all weekend if you need it. So they flew me into Chicago O'Hare. My host picked me up. She drove me to the airport. I'm gonna get this right. I drank a lot when I was younger. Y'all understand. Anyway, so she drove me to the hotel and I've never seen anything like this. It was a humongous, absolutely gorgeous, elegant hotel. I'm a simple kind of girl, real talk. I'm not used to fancy things. And so I just thought it was absolutely gorgeous. It took my breath away. And when I walked into the hotel in the middle of the foyer, there was this Christmas tree so big, the ornaments were like the size of my head. And there were thousands of gingerbread houses everywhere. And it was just gorgeous. And there was Christmas music. And I thought I had died and gone to heaven. So I go up to the concierge and I said, excuse me, what is this? What kind of hotel is this? Is this like an Omni Marriott? Like, what is it? Like an Econo Lodge? Like, what is it? And he goes, no, ma'am. He said, no, this is not a chain hotel. This is a privately owned hotel. And I said, well, it's very nice. And he goes, ma'am, do you not know where you are? And I said, no, I don't. Where am I? He goes, ma'am, you're at the old Playboy Mansion. Now, see, I've always thought that I should be invited to the Playboy Mansion. I just didn't know I had to get sober to do it. If I had known, y'all would have got me sooner. So if you're in here and you knew this program goes far beyond not drinking one day at a time, many amazing things will happen. But you can work this program just enough to pick up a chip once a year, or you can be rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence. How free do you want to be? That's what we say in Texas. This year has been the hardest year of my sobriety. The last 4 months have been the most trying times for me. I believe that's why I'm here this weekend. By being here with you, by pouring, my cup is overflowing. And I know a year from now, I will look back and I will understand the magnitude and the purpose of why I was here. I'm standing in the middle of a miracle so big I can't see the edges, like my friend says. Thank you so much for keeping me sober this weekend, and thank you for my life.